Hey, storyteller! Action scenes ramp up the tension, build momentum, and keep readers hooked, unless you use too many of them or the same kind of action over and over. What happens when a movie rattles the cinema speakers with explosion after explosion? The audience stops caring, stops being shocked, and gets bored. That happened to me a few years ago when watching a certain superhero movie. And it's an even bigger danger in your story, where you don't have seat-shaking booms or flashing images to keep readers riveted to the page. Plus, high-speed chases and epic physical fights may not even fit your genre. So how can you create action scenes that keep readers riveted and serve your story? In this week's writer coaching session, we'll explore 15 different types of action that can ramp up any genre. Whether you're writing a high-stakes thriller, a fantasy epic, or a sweet romance, one of these scene types is sure to leave you inspired and ready to write. Hi, I'm Bridget from B Squared Writer Coaching, an author, editor, and your story coach, here to help you make your story powerful, polished, and publishable. No matter what kind of action you include in your story, it will have little impact if the other elements surrounding it aren't solid. To help you make sure your character's plot, setting, and theme pack as much punch as the conflict in your action scenes, check out my free workshop, 6 Essential Elements of a Powerful Story. Just click the link in the description or visit www.b2writercoaching.com/workshop to watch this 25-minute video packed with some of my best writing tips. And be sure to stick around to the end of this video so you won't miss this week's power-up, a super practical action step you can use right now in the story you're working on. Based on this video's title, you may be asking yourself, can there really be 15 different types of action scenes? Well, yes and no. One of them has subcategories with such distinct styles and considerations, I gave each their own number. Which type of action scene warrants 4 distinct listings? Now, this is a spoiler-free zone. You'll have to stick around to find out. Whatever type of action scene you choose, it is important to make it intense and immersive, so your reader feels like she's right there with the characters, experiencing the heart-pounding moments. For tips on how to do this, check out last week's video linked above and in the description. That was installment 1 in our 3-video mini-series on action scenes. And as we discuss the 15 types I have for you, make note of any that you've maybe never thought of, and also of what is your favorite type of action scene. Comment below and share your thoughts. One of the first things people think of when they hear the term action scene is speed. Screeching tires and heart-pounding races to beat the clock. That's exactly the focus of our first 2 types of action scenes. The chase. Action scenes involving chases are a staple of the thriller and action-adventure genres. These adrenaline-pumping sequences can take place in a variety of settings and are not limited to cars whizzing through the city streets. They can include foot chases, daring horseback rides, aerial pursuits, speedboat races, etc. The key to a great chase scene is to keep it fast-paced, intense, and unpredictable, with high stakes. Incorporating multiple obstacles into the chase sequence keeps the audience engaged and heightens the tension. Obstacles could be anything from unexpected turns, jumps over barriers, traffic jams, or even a surprise shot fired at the protagonist from above. Here are some important considerations to keep in mind when writing a chase scene. Point of view. Is this scene told from the perspective of the pursuer or the one fleeing? A pursuer could be a police officer chasing a dangerous criminal, and the person fleeing could be, well, the person trying to get away from that criminal, among other things. There can be many perspectives involved in a chase scene. Next, consider the stakes. What happens if the character is caught or escapes? What happens for the viewpoint character and the opposing party? Also consider the setting. It's a crucial factor in a scene like this. If we're involved in a high-speed car chase through the city, then what obstacles might be in the way? How do bystanders and ordinary traffic affect the outcome of the scene? If this is an aerial pursuit, are there storms lurking ahead, shifting air currents, mountains to fly around? Pursuers on horseback may run into rivers that block their path, etc. Also consider the skill level of the characters involved. An experienced horseman is going to have an advantage over a newbie in a chase scene. And finally, what are some agitating factors that could be in your scene? Are weapons involved? Hostages? Has a character sustained injuries? All these and more can affect the outcome and the momentum of the chase. The race against time. In this type of scene, the stakes are high and the clock is ticking, sometimes literally. The protagonist must act fast to prevent a disaster or save a life. Whether the character is trying to defuse a bomb, prevent an assassination, just get to the prize ahead of the competition, or even get to class on time. This type of scene requires precision and strategy from both the protagonist and the author. Here are some considerations to keep in mind when writing a race against time. What is the character trying to do or prevent? That will determine the intensity of the scene and the movements and actions of the character. What are the personal stakes involved if the character fails or if he or she succeeds? In all these scenes, be sure to make it about more than just the greater good or saving society from the bomb. Make it personal, make it matter to the character, then it will matter to the reader. Add obstacles to slow the character down and make time seem sure to run out. And consider what can make the task more difficult for your character. Not only obstacles, but skill level or things going wrong, technology not working. There are lots of things you can use here. The next set of action scene types we'll explore involve danger or imprisonment, and all the aspects involved in each. These include attack or capture scenes, or a combination of both, thrilling escapes, and daring rescue missions. For each of these scene types, one of the main considerations is point of view. Whose side is the reader on? Are we in the head of the pursuer or captor, or the victim? And if you want to show the perspectives of the rescuer and the captive, do so in a multi-scene action sequence, since we shouldn't shift perspectives within a single scene unless you're writing omniscient point of view. The attack or capture scene. In this scenario, the viewpoint character is either the victim or perpetrator of an attack, ambush, or attempt to capture one or more other characters. This could be an assault or robbery by a random thug, a deliberate attack by an enemy, an attempt to apprehend a dangerous fugitive if we're rooting for the captor, a hostage situation, etc. Here are just a few considerations you may want to keep in mind when writing an attack or capture scene. Does it morph into a fight scene in which the intended prisoner or victim puts up a mighty struggle that turns into a brawl? Does it start with or turn into a chase scene? Or is the victim unskilled in fighting or self-defense and becomes subdued or surrenders as a matter of survival? What is the motivation behind the attack or capture? Why does either the viewpoint character who is trying to apprehend this person want to do so, or if this is from the viewpoint of the victim, why does the enemy want to do this? What are the stakes for the viewpoint character, whichever way you go with this scene? What happens if the capture or attack succeeds, and what happens for that character if it fails? One of the most classic and beloved action scene types is the thrilling escape. There have been whole movies made based on this premise. One classic even uses this as the title, The Great Escape. In this scene type, the protagonist or viewpoint character struggles to free herself from confinement or evade danger. This can take many forms, from a prison break to a daring evacuation from a burning building. But they all have one thing in common: heart-pounding tension. This type of action scene requires escalating suspense as the protagonist tries to outsmart her captors, avoid detection, or dodge the hazards of a perilous setting. A great escape scene will make readers more invested than ever as they root for your character to get out alive. Here are some considerations to keep in mind when writing this type of scene. What is the victim escaping from? Could be the setting, a burning building, a tornado, an avalanche, the bottom of a well, etc. Perhaps it's physical restraint, someone's grip as they're holding the character bodily, bonds of some sort, like they're tied to a tree or in chains. It could be a location imprisonment, a cage, a locked room, a dungeon, cell, house arrest. Or the character may need to escape from guards or some type of surveillance, whether that's tech or magical. Is this a stealth escape where we need to avoid detection, or happening right in front of the captors and possibly fighting for freedom, or battling the environment? Are others involved, either helping or hindering the escape? Or maybe there are other prisoners and our viewpoint character wants to get them out as well, or is worried that those people will sound the alarm. This could also include threats to others who are elsewhere. For example, the captors may have threatened this person's loved ones if she tries to escape. The rescue mission. One of my favorite types of action scenes is the daring rescue. These scenes have a long literary history dating all the way back to the fairy tale, in which heroes swooped in to save the day and rescued someone in danger. The great thing about this form of action scene is that the reader doesn't always know what kind of danger the rescuer is going to face. Will he or she have to dodge bullets, jump from a moving vehicle, evade ancient booby traps, or invisible laser beams that trigger an alarm? Or pick her way around collapsing floors and walls of flame? What really makes a rescue mission so captivating, though, is the intense emotion it evokes. Will someone get this beloved character to safety in time? Will the brave rescuer save the one she loves or even survive the mission? The more personal the stakes, the better. They create a strong need to know and a powerful connection between readers and your story. Here are a few considerations to keep in mind when writing rescue scenes. Whose side are we on? Do we want this person rescued? If it's a dangerous criminal and his minions are trying to break him out, no, we want to prevent the rescue. Is the victim conscious and participating or unwittingly hindering the rescue? Is he or she aware that the rescue is even happening? What are the obstacles to the rescue? Setting, guards, natural hazards, etc. And is this a stealth mission or blunt force rescue? Are we sneaking in and trying to avoid detection to break this person out? Or is this a full-on military assault on a compound and everybody knows what's going on? Or maybe even we're using some kind of diversion to distract the enemy while another part of the team is sneaking in. We're really just getting started in our list of action scene types, but if you're finding this helpful so far, consider clicking the like button so YouTube will share this video with more writers like you. Action scenes don't always involve in-your-face mayhem or loud sound effects. Some, in fact, are just the opposite. Subtle, silent, sneaky, and suspense-inducing. These next two scene types rely on all of that. The heist. Whether it's a bank robbery gone wrong, a museum heist with unforeseen complications, or an episode of Mission Impossible, this type of action scene creates tension through uncertainty. In a typical heist scene, the reader knows that a high-stakes stealth mission is about to happen because the main characters have been planning it throughout part of the story. This type of scene is much more than a mere break-in, though. It involves meticulous preparation, teamwork, and execution, giving you ample opportunity to explore character traits and relationships. Readers love to watch how the characters will use their skills and knowledge to overcome various obstacles, unforeseen situations, and challenges. The more things go wrong or plans fall apart, the better. Here are a few considerations when writing a heist scene. Character motivations for the heist. Make the reader care. Characters' goals may include anything from stealing money or jewels to fund a business venture, bankrupt an enemy, or pay for a child's surgery. On the other hand, their mission may involve reclaiming stolen property or retrieving sensitive information before it can fall into the wrong hands. Consider what's at stake for the characters, personally and for the group as a whole. Keep in mind that action scenes can occur during the planning and equipment gathering phases, as well as the actual heist. What gets in the way of the heist? Group dynamics and conflicts within the team, logistical issues, near detection, etc. Show plans not always working out as intended. One thing to keep in mind is that in a heist story, we often show the reader what the characters are planning before the heist ever happens. If you do this, then you don't want to show the characters planning the heist and then executing it and those plans all working as intended. This feels repetitive to the reader. If the plans are going to work out, then only hint at them beforehand. However, if you do want to show the planning phase, it's more exciting to the reader if those plans don't go as the characters expected. Now let's discuss the stealth mission. Spies, clues, and intrigue, oh my! This type of scene has similar elements to a heist, but doesn't always involve a group of characters. A detective or other suspicious character searching for clues in a place she shouldn't be entering? Well, yeah, that works in similar fashion to a heist in that we need to avoid detection and some planning is involved, or at least should be. Some of the same issues are at stake. Danger of discovery, unseen traps or alarms, mishaps, making too much noise, the need to escape, and failure to retrieve the goal item or discover the needed information. Stealth is a must for secret agents, crafty detectives, and even suspicious girlfriends who want to make sure Mr. Right isn't hanging out with Miss Wrong. Here are some considerations to keep in mind when writing stealth missions. Your characters need to have a clear goal, motivations, and stakes. Why is the character spying or sneaking around? And on whom? What are the risks of detection? Alarm systems, a dog, a party in the next room, etc.? What happens if the character is discovered? And consider the setting. What problems does the story world or environment pose in sneaking in or out? Show close calls. A character drops something and makes too much noise. A person comes into the room or area and the character has to hide, etc. You can also use the ticking time bomb or race against time factor here too. If a character only has a small window of time before the room will be occupied or something else will happen in the setting that makes her need to leave. Environments and events. Let's look at scenes that revolve around the setting, a sport or competition, or a science-based situation. The sinister setting. Natural disaster movies, anyone? These types of scenes can involve the character facing not only nature, but a hostile story world or a rough section of the setting. Whether your protagonist is navigating her way through a treacherous jungle or outsmarting a sentient game arena, like in the Hunger Games or Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, this type of scene requires her to use her wits and skills to win the fight or survive. These scenes offer a great opportunity to immerse readers in the journey by using descriptive writing techniques that paint a vivid picture of the world around your characters. Settings can become as much of a character as the people in them. Here are a few considerations to keep in mind when writing this type of scene. What dangers does this setting pose? Do they worsen as time passes? Is there a route of escape? What stands in the way? And again, we need to look at point of view. Are we in the dangerous setting or trying to rescue someone from it? Is there a time constraint for survival, like running out of air, a structure collapsing, or the way of escape closing permanently, etc.? How many people are involved? Are other characters helping or perhaps hindering? And what is the cause of this danger in the setting? Are we dealing with a natural disaster, arson, a catastrophe caused by an accident or negligence, an intentional attack, etc.? The scientific scenario. From the theoretical possibilities of futuristic technology to the very real danger of a science experiment gone wrong, and even to the mad scientists creating monsters in a lab, science-based action scenes can add a unique flavor to your story. The tension and urgency created by these situations can lead to heart-pounding action scenes as characters race against time to prevent disaster. Whether it's a group of scientists trying to contain an outbreak or a lone hero fighting against a rogue experiment, science-based action scenes have plenty of potential for drama and excitement. You can also adapt this type of scene to hinge on magic instead. Potion mishaps, magical properties in water sources that create oversized, almost invincible beasts, like in the Castle in the Wild series by Sharon Rose, a spell with unforeseen consequences, etc. Here are some considerations to keep in mind when writing a science-based or magic-based action scene. What is the cause? Is the danger a result of a character's misjudgment or negligence, an accident, sabotage, an evil act, etc.? What are the stakes and tone of the scene? Is this a fight against a deadly virus, or is this something a bit lighter-hearted, like the action scenes in the movie Flubber, where the science experiment causes lots of hijinks and mayhem, but nobody's lives are really in danger, and a lot of humor ensues? Through whose point of view are we experiencing the scene? A scientist, a bystander, emergency personnel, government officials, etc. Sports or competition scenes. From football competitions with scholarships on the line, to foot races to prove oneself worthy of the Olympics, sports stories, especially underdog sports stories, are a favorite among readers and moviegoers alike. An effective competition or sports scene can add high-energy action and adrenaline to your novel or short story. But they aren't limited to athletic contests. This could be a battle of wits, especially if survival is at stake, like in The Princess Bride, a riddle-solving contest, like in The Hobbit. Academic competitions and other contests can create just as much suspense and excitement if the reader is invested in the characters and the stakes are personal. Depending on the sport or competition, the scene may focus on tension and drama surrounding a particular character's goals or a team rivalry. Here are considerations to keep in mind when writing a sports or competition scene. Is this a real sport or competitive event or one you've invented? The action must be exciting and personal while accurately reflecting the rules and movements involved in the sport or contest. If you're writing about a sport or competition that you're not familiar with, be sure to do your research. Nothing will throw a reader out of your story faster than getting some football terminology wrong during the middle of a championship game scene. Consider what's at stake if your character succeeds or fails. Is this a team effort? Are we cheering for the entire group? Or is it focused on one member or one competitor? Even in a team sport, we might really be focused on the goals of one particular team member. What stands in the way of the goal? Is the competitor more skilled or does he have other advantages? Perhaps he's willing to cheat? Is the viewpoint character battling some kind of weakness, injury, lack of support, poor equipment, etc.? Are there environmental obstacles? A rainstorm during an outdoor competition, for example, or lots of interruptions happening during an event? Maybe the fire alarm goes off? Above all, don't choreograph every move. This will be boring and the reader will lose the thread of the important parts of the story. Our final categories of action scene types are the ones that are most well known in terms of type and placement in the story. Fights and finales. Okay, the moment you've all been waiting for. The one type of action scene that's really 4 distinct variations. The fight scene. I like to classify fight scenes as close combat, shootouts, aerial battles, and epic battles. We'll discuss fights and battles in more depth in our next writer coaching session, but there are 2 main ways we can look at the types of fight scenes: the number of opponents and proximity. For number of opponents, is this a 1-to-1 fight, one against a group, a contest between 2 small groups, or large groups involved in a battle of epic scale? In terms of proximity, we have 3 different categories. In close combat, the opponent is close enough to touch. Characters may wield swords, knives, fists, magic requiring direct physical contact, tasers, etc., and the battle can be epic or personal. It can be a fight between 2 people or large armies, but within that large-scale battle, individual characters are battling with swords, axes, or other weapons in duels that are essentially 1-to-1 or 1 to a few. The next proximity category is near distance. This would involve throwing grenades at someone nearby or shootouts with bows, guns, lasers, targeted magic spells, etc. Then we have long-range fights. These involve snipers, aerial dogfights, missile launches, dropped bombs, remote detonated or timed explosives, catapults, etc. Each type of fight scene will have logistical considerations to keep in mind. Consider what the character must and would focus on during this kind of fight. Only describe things that this character would actually notice during the battle. Remember, focus is going to be on survival more than anything else. How does the choreography work in this kind of fight? It's going to be vastly different for an individual brawl in a back alley than it would be for a soldier battling the next combatant in an epic war. Keep it realistic. Consider what the character can and cannot do in this type of fight, the impact of injuries, etc. How does the setting contribute to or hinder the fight and characters' movements? This will include things like terrain, the wind, speed, and direction in an aerial fight, etc. Consider which, if any, weapons are used, and whether they are appropriate to this type of fight, how different types of weapons can or cannot combat each other, etc. For example, if one character is wielding a sword and the other has a spear, how will they fight each other? The fighting styles for each of these weapons will be completely different. Hold on, don't go anywhere. We're not done yet. We can't close this book before we get to the big finish, the finale, the high-stakes climactic scene or sequence. The finale is the moment of truth for your story. Will it pay off for the reader or fall flat? It is the ultimate test of your protagonist's strength and abilities and the culmination of all the events that have led to this point. This is also where you will put all the skills you've learned in crafting action scenes to their most important use yet. However, just as much rides on what came before as what you'll put into this scene. Make sure you've built up the suspense throughout the story so you can release it in one explosive scene at the end. Remember, this scene will leave the most lasting impression of your story on readers, so make it count. Here are considerations to keep in mind when writing your action-packed climactic scene. Above all, consider the stakes. They should be higher in this scene than they have been in any other part of your story. Also consider the payoffs. Fulfill the promises you've made to readers at the beginning and throughout the story. Tension should also be at the highest level yet. And be sure to show your protagonist using what she's learned throughout the story, whether that's skills gained, a new willingness to rely on the help of others, etc. Or if you're writing a negative character arc, show the protagonist refusing to use those things, and that leading to a defeat or failure. Make this scene personal as well as sweeping. So the fate of the world being at stake in the climax may seem like the ultimate tension inducer, but it really isn't. It's what's personally at stake for your protagonist that readers will care the most about. What's your favorite type of action scene, either to read or write about? Let me know in the comments. For this week's Power Up, choose one of the action scene types we've discussed today, maybe one that you haven't written before, or perhaps one you haven't even thought about in terms of action scenes. Review the tips and considerations I've outlined for that type of scene and try writing it to fit into your current work in progress, a previous story you've written, or a brand new story idea. Even if that type of scene doesn't seem to normally fit the genre you write in or your writing preferences, give it a try. Stretching yourself as a writer in this way can help you improve existing skills and develop new ones. Whatever types of action scenes you decide to include in your story, writing them is not an easy task, and there are mistakes you need to avoid. To find out what those are so you won't make them in your scenes, check out this video, and let's power up your storytelling.